back to the office. I'm Dr. Sweeney. You'll see Dr. Gephardt momentarily, and I'm sure you've met Catherine and Casey up to this point already. This is our total food makeover. We get tons of questions about nutrition in the office. Every 15 minutes we get a new question about nutrition, and I always get the statement when we start asking patients. I get a lot of people that say, you know what, I know what I need to do. I know how to eat. I just don't do the right things, or I just don't do it. And when we sit and we interview patients one-on-one, what we find is most people don't really know what to do. They think they know what they need to do, but in reality, a lot of what they think is the right thing to do is the wrong, and vice versa. So we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to teach you the truth about nutrition. Raise your hand if you've ever been a little bit confused about nutrition, right? Everybody. There's so many different opinions and theories and experts out there, so we're going to show you the actual truth. Where do we get our information about nutrition, largely? Marketers. Was it TV, marketing, media, right? We get most of our information from the media. And who runs the media? Just to be not conspiracy theorists, but to be honest, it's the people, what's that? Yeah, the big food. So you have Nabisco, Frito-Lay, ConAgra, Monsanto, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. Do they have your interest at heart, or are they concerned about profits and stockholders? So you're getting information that's coming based on how much they can sell you. That's the key. So you can't really trust what you see on the TV. You sort of have to ferret through the reality of what's going on. This is a snapshot of the severity of the picture in our country. Out of the top 37 industrialized nations, the U.S. ranks number 37. Where do you think Tennessee is on the list of the 50 states?
49.
Yeah, it's either 48 or 49, depending on the year. It's Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee. We're all right there in the bottom. Great football in the SEC, except for Tennessee. But we have really crappy health. I went to UT, so I can say that. So for perspective, we're in the second sickest state in the sickest country on the planet. So we're at ground zero. We're the sickest place on planet Earth where we live. And when you look at that statistic, those little black things aren't just colors or pixels. That's your family. That's the people you go to church with. That's your friends. Those are the people we love and care about the most, are sick and dying because they don't have the information, largely the information that you're going to get today. So our system that we have in place when you do get sick, it's not really a democracy, it's a pharmacracy. It's based on pharmaceutical sales. You're essentially run, if big food runs the media, then big pharma runs our healthcare system. So again, their interests are not your health, it's their stockholders' dividends. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. When we look at some of these statistics here, in this country, 45 million on asthma medications, 24 million on ADHD medications, 9 million on antidepressants, 5 million on blood pressure medicines, 300,000 on sleep aids, and 94,000 on statin drugs or cholesterol-lowering drugs. And these are our kids. So those statistics aren't adults. That's our children. Those are under the age of 18 in this country. That's an appalling statistic. The system we have in place, quite frankly, is broken. It's sick care, not health care. If you want to take control of your health, it's up to you. We've got to pull the reins back. We've got to take the control out of the government's hands. Obama's not going to fix the problem. Romney's not going to fix the problem. It's you and your family. And it starts with families. The more families we can get healthier, then we start changing communities. And that's really our mission, is we want to change this town, and that starts really one at a time. It's not baby fat. 20% of our American 4-year-olds are obese. Childhood obesity has more than tripled over the last 20 years, and so has adolescent obesity. And if you're an overweight adolescent, or if you're an overweight child, you have a 70% chance of being an overweight adult. So it's not just our adults, it's actually our children too. 15 pounds of weight gain doubles your risk of type 2 diabetes, which is the average amount of weight that most people gain after the age of 35, so it's not a tremendous amount of weight, it's just average for most people. If you gain 22 pounds, you increase your risk of a heart attack by 75%, and obesity doubles your risk of heart failure and triples your risk of breast cancer in women, and colon cancer is roughly the same in men. So who here is trying to diet? Who is currently on the same diet that they started this time last year? Almost nobody, because diets are temporary, they're unsustainable, you can't keep them up long term. Every diet can work in the short term. I can eat one Twinkie a day and lose a tremendous amount of weight, but is that going to make me healthier? answer is obviously no. So we get the South Beach diet, the zone, paleo, eat this, not that, I can do this, the genotype, just over and over and over. It's a ridiculous number of actual diets. This is my favorite one, is the Taco Bell diet. You've seen that on TV. The wine diet, or if you prefer beer, you got the beer diet.
I like the wine.
Wine diet. This is what happens when you combine diets. You combine the beer diet and the Taco Bell diet at once. That's your result. Here's we're going to go through a few things called myths. In reality, these should be called lies, because a myth is a lot more benign. There's not a lot of sting to it, but a lie is something that's told with a manipulative action behind it. And really, you guys are being lied to. If you look at the media as your source of information, it's really based on lies. So the first myth or lie is that heart disease, cancer, sickness, disease, and misery are just normal part of the aging process. That's just how it happens, and really nothing could be further from the truth. They're very common in this country, but common does not necessarily mean that they're normal. When you look at other countries around the world or other cultures around the world, the Hunzas, the Okinawans, Titicaca's, that's my favorite one to say. Those cultures don't have our diseases. So they have our genes, but they don't have our same health indicators. And when you look at Okinawans, for instance, 1% of their population dies from heart disease and cancer, and here it's 84%. So literally 5 out of 6 of us die of either heart disease and cancer, and we know that those are largely preventable. What do you think happens to Okinawans if they move to Nashville? Think they stay at 1%?
No.
Yeah, they get our same rates. You live our lifestyle, you get our same diseases. So that's the key. The older you get, the fatter you get. Again, that's common in the U.S., but it's certainly not normal. When you look at Okinawan populations, I won't explain this graph in detail, but they actually lose weight over their lifespan. They peak around age 30 or 40, and then they begin to gradually, not drastically, but slightly lose weight as they age. Whereas the traditional Americans, we just tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger until we die. Mom and dad had heart disease. This is probably the most dangerous and most pervasive lie that you guys are told on a regular basis, that you're basically just victims of your genes. Mom and dad have crappy genes, then you're just going to have the same genes. Mom and dad had good genes, then you're lucky and you're going to have good genes too. Nothing really could be further from the truth. In studies with Okinawans, they have the same high-risk genes as we do. So when you look at dead Okinawans, they have all the genes for cancer, they have all the genes for heart disease. Those genes just never get turned on. We're going to talk about in a second how those genes are like switches. They have to be turned on, and they can be turned off. And you look at studies with twins that are separated at birth tend to have different health. They don't have the same diseases. And when you look at adopted children, generally the adopted kids will have the health of the adoptive parents. So if it's just our genetics, they should have the same health as their biological parents. When you look at studies, they actually have the same health as their adopted parents. So you control your genes based on your lifestyle. According to the research, only 5% of our diseases, namely cancer and heart disease, comes from our genes. 95% comes from our lifestyle. So that statistic is not meant to make people feel bad if they are sick. It's not pointing blame. It's not denigrating people that have gotten sick. It's really a message of hope. Because if you can lifestyle your way into those problems, then you can lifestyle your way out of those problems. And that's part of what we're going to teach today. It's called epigenetics. I don't have time to go into that today, but that's the new revolution in genetic study, is what's called epigenetics, where we control our genes. They've shown in the laboratory you can put your cells in a good environment and your good genes get turned on and your bad ones get turned off. You put your cells in a bad environment, your bad genes get turned on and your good ones get turned off. So you can change genetic expression based on your environment. So it's all up to us. It's our choice. We get to choose the gym or the couch. You decide every second of every day. We're always making decisions, and it's literally up to us. The plans that we teach, because we don't teach diets, we teach lifestyle plans, are based on this book. And this is a book that really every one of you should own. Everybody in this room and everyone you know should own this book. It's the best nutrition book I've ever seen. It condenses it down to about 150 pages. It's an easy read. It's got all the recipes you need. It goes through the science of what we're going to talk about today. And it also has how to stock your kitchen and how to shop and how to cook and how to eat and really how to do it reasonably. This is Mary's situation. When she came in, she was about 167 pounds. She did what's called our advanced plan, which we'll talk about momentarily. And over the course of 90 days, she lost about 60 pounds. No dieting, No restriction. She got her hormones in control. We'll talk about a hormone called leptin. If you want to be healthy, especially if you want to be fit, you have to know about a hormone called leptin. She got that under control, and she lost weight effortlessly. What's SAD stand for?
Standard American Diet.
Standard American Diet, right? It's what we tend to eat as a culture, and it is very sad. So the reason it's sad is because we damage the 3 key macronutrients, which are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Those are the 3 things that give us the most calories. In some cases, alcohol will have to be added to that. But for the most part, we get all our calories from fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And when we manipulate those, it changes our health indicators. We're going to spend some time on fat, because fat is the number one, good, healthy fat is the number one key missing nutrient in our diet. So if you want to get healthy, the first thing you need to start thinking about is good, healthy fats. And the key is you want to replace your damaged fats with good, healthy fats. What about this myth buster, or lie, that fat makes you fat? You eat fat, you're going to get fat. Over the 60s and 70s, we've seen this revolution of, you got low-fat everything. You see low-fat cookies and low-fat brownies and low-fat cupcakes, low-fat ice cream and low-fat milk, and we have more high-fat people than at any time in our entire history. So it's not the fat that makes you fat, it's your inability to burn it. And that, again, comes down to hormones. In fact, when you eat the healthy fats, it helps you to burn fat. Some healthy fats, I won't read these all, but they help you absorb vitamins. They regulate, or the building blocks of your hormones. They lower inflammation. They allow you for proper cellular detoxification. If you don't have good fats, then you're going to be toxic. By the way, too, where do you think your body stores toxins?
Liver?
Liver's a secondary source. It actually gets transported to the liver before your body excretes it, but it's stored where? Fat. Stored in your fat cells. Because fat cells are neutral, so they can stick the toxin in the fat cell and stick it away for safe keeping, essentially. It keeps it away from your vital organs. So you can't lose weight until you get rid of the toxins. You have to get rid of toxins before your body will let you get rid of fat, because all those toxins are stored in those fat cells. Conjugated linoleic acid, which helps you burn fat, and there's another one called arachidonic acid, which is essential for brain function. Those are all components of healthy fats. Here's some examples. You guys should know all of these, just in case you don't. Olive oil, fish oil. Everyone should be taking their fish oils every day, unless you live in Alaska and your mom is an Eskimo. You really need to be taking fish oil, because we just don't get enough healthy, oily fish in our diets. Avocados, nuts and seeds, coconuts, real butter. By the way, too, with coconuts, who's been told coconuts are bad? Have you ever heard that before? Why are you supposed to avoid coconuts?
Saturated
For
fat.
saturated fat, right? What a lie that is. We're going to talk about that momentarily. Real butter. I've also been told that real butter is terrible for you. If you eat butter, it will literally turn into artery clogging plaque and find your heart and cause an immediate heart attack, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. Raw cheeses, yogurt, and milks. Grass-fed meat, and that makes all the difference. Free-range eggs and chicken, and then fatty fish from Pacific wild salmon, and then small fish, sardines, mackerel, just the tiny little fish, anchovies, if anybody likes anchovies. I don't like anchovies, and I don't like oily fish, so I just take my fish oils. That's my out. I'll never eat that oily fish ever, so I'm just going to have to suffer. I'm sorry. Fat has a bad rap. Again, that whole movement where we saw butter and meat consumption drop drastically, about 50% during that time frame, and then you saw margarine consumption rise steadily, and then we also saw an increasing rise in heart disease. So when you replace God's fats, which is butter and lard, with man-made fats, you see extra heart disease and cancer. This is from Dr. Dudley White. He said when he began his practice back in 1920, he had never seen an MI patient or a heart attack patient. He had never seen a patient in his practice. I think he was in practice about 15 years up to that point. And then after that time, at that time, fats were just basically butter and lard. And all the benefit from that kind of diet, when no one ever even had heard of the word corn oil, didn't even exist. So when we introduce these man-made fats, we get sicker and sicker. This is what it's based on. It's this lipid hypothesis that if you have high fat and elevated cholesterol, then that causes heart disease. Everyone's heard that, right? If you have high fat and high cholesterol and high triglycerides, you're going to get heart disease. And really, that's not true. In fact, there's no research that's ever been able to link a low-fat diet and lower cholesterol to lower risk of coronary artery disease. Many people, or more people that have heart attacks, have normal cholesterol than high cholesterol. And if you have a heart attack, your chance of survival is better if your cholesterol is higher. So we know that cholesterol is actually protective in some way. Your body's elevating its cholesterol to protect itself against you. It's its body's best mechanism. We'll talk about a little more in a second. In other cultures, France and Spain, they eat about 30% more butter and lard and saturated fat than we do, but their rates of cancer and heart disease are drastically lower. Out of East Africa, you have the Maasai Indian tribe. They sustain their entire living on goats. They eat goat's meat, they drink goat's milk, and they drink goat's blood. That's their entire diet. They have no vegetables, no fruit. I don't know that I would recommend that it's not in the book. But that's their entire diet is saturated fat. But they have no heart disease and they have no cancer. They've done autopsies on these people and they have absolutely no plaque in their arteries. And all they eat is saturated fat and protein, essentially. And then we have what's called the Framingham study. The Framingham study is in this book as well. It was in northern Massachusetts, an ongoing study. It was about 20 years up to that point. They found that the people that ate the most saturated fat had the least amount of heart disease. And on the opposite side of that, if you ate less saturated fat, you had more heart disease. Completely contrary to what you've been taught. Butter's bad. I've always been taught that butter was bad. It contains arachidonic acid, which is essential for brain function. It also contains conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, which helps you to burn fat. It tells those leptin receptors, which we'll talk about in a minute, to burn fat. It makes you burn fat. And again, in other cultures, they eat a lot more butter and they have a lot less deaths. So trans fats. Everybody needs to know what a trans fat is. What's the code word for trans fat?
Crisco.
That's the commercial one. What's the scientific code word that you're not going to look on the back of a label and see trans fat? They're smart enough to not. What's that?
Hydrogenated.
Hydrogenated, right. Or partially hydrogenated. So anytime you see hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, you know that that is a trans fat. And it's found in margarine, bread, crackers, cookies, salad dressings, all the good stuff, right? And it's also soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, and canola oil. Where does canola oil come from? It's in a lot of our kitchens. Anyone ever seen a canola plant? You ever seen a canola plant? It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a canola plant. It comes from, it's Canadian oil low acid. It's an acronym for man-made oil, and it's a far derivative from rapeseed. So it's by the time it reaches the shelf, and definitely by the time it's in your body, it's already rancid. So it's a trans fat, even though it says trans fat free on the back side of the bottle. So avoid canola oil like the plague.
So lard is okay.
If you can find lard and it comes from an organic source, because we're going to talk about in a minute, the health of the animal makes all the difference. So if that was a healthy fat animal that wasn't pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, then that's a healthy source of fat for you. And then you got to read labels. You got to read labels. It takes 8 seconds to read a label, so we should all read labels. The key is to eat foods that don't even have labels. So broccoli and apples don't even have a label, so it's even better if it doesn't have a label. The less ingredients it has, the better. And you got to read the back side of the label. Because legally, they're allowed to lie to you on the front side. You see the front side says no trans fat. Can you read what the 5th ingredient or 5th or 6th ingredient? Yeah, it's hydrogenated vegetable oil. So clearly, it has trans fats. So what they do is they manipulate serving sizes. They as long as it has less than 500 milligrams of trans fat, they can legally put on the front side that it has no trans fats. Not that it has little or light, it says that it has none. So they're allowed to legally lie. That ought to infuriate everybody in this room. And who are we giving this peanut butter to? Kids, right? So what they do is as long as you're eating less than 1 teaspoon, you're staying under that 500 milligram threshold. Who the heck eats less than a teaspoon of Skippy? No, nobody. It's like about a cupful. The half-life of a trans fat is 51 days. So that means when you eat a trans fat, it stays in your body for about 102 days. It takes 51 days for your body to get rid of about half of that trans fat. So you're paying for the French fries that you ate back in July, right? It's still part of, because it gets integrated into our cell walls. So it stays in your body. And it's in everything. It's in cereal and chips and crackers and fortune cookies, and everything that comes in a box or a bag generally will contain these trans fats. Here's the biggest one, other than the genetic myth, is that cholesterol causes heart disease. Again, that's not true. It's the oxidation of cholesterol that causes that heart disease. And again, more people have heart attacks with low or normal cholesterol than high. We'll talk about statin drugs in a moment. The real cause of heart disease is inflammation. It's not your cholesterol, it's inflammation. And when we eat inflammatory foods, it scars the arterial wall. So if your arterial wall is this nice, smooth, dry wall, when you eat those bad foods, it takes a nick out of that drywall and causes inflammation. And that is the true cause of heart disease. Cholesterol you have to make hormones. Estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, all of your hormones are made up of cholesterol. They make bile acids. They're healthy, or they're vital for proper neurological function and for repairing cells and also for healing. And again, it's the oxidation of cholesterol that is the problem, and that's due to inflammation. So this is from Dr. George Mann. He co-founded the Framingham study. He said that this hypothesis has repeatedly shown to be wrong, and yet for complicated reasons of pride, profit, and prejudice, the hypothesis continues to be exploited by scientists, fundraising enterprises, food companies, and even governmental agencies. The public is being deceived by the greatest health scam of the century. Statin drugs are the best-selling drugs on planet Earth. Lipitor is the best-selling drug of all time. And what they found was, and I have this study out of Business Week, there's no benefit in seniors. No benefit in seniors. Who are they giving those drugs to? There's no benefit in women of any age. And the only benefit is in middle-aged men between 35 and 55 that have already had a heart attack. And in that small subgroup, they only get about a 2 to 3% reduction of a future heart attack. And it's disgusting. The potential side effects are headaches, constipation, diarrhea, increased risk of cancer. They know that statin drugs are carcinogenic. They increase your risk of dementia, early onset Alzheimer's, rash, muscle joint pain, muscle wasting disease, which is called rhabdomyolysis. What's your heart made out of? Muscle. Right? So it's causing destruction of your heart muscle. You're trying to help your heart by lowering your cholesterol, but it's actually destroying your heart muscle. Muscle wasting disease, liver failure, and it costs about $1,000 out of pocket for the patient, and there's no benefit. So when there is no perceived benefit, then there's no acceptable risk, right? And the way our healthcare system runs, it's not based on data. It's really just based on what makes money. And that's a sad fact. We need medicines in certain circumstances, but for the diseases we really need to worry about, these medicines do nothing or, in fact, make the problem much, much worse. By the way, too, if you're on one of these statin drugs, you should go to your primary, whoever prescribed them, and ask them if they are also prescribing coenzyme Q10. If they know anything about statin pharmacology, they need to know that it blocks the production of coenzyme Q10. You need that for cellular energy, to regulate your metabolism, to even feel halfway normal. You have to have CoQ10. If they're not giving you CoQ10 with your statin, then I would not take their prescribing recommendations because they do not know about this statin pharmacology. Fat in meat causes heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. We've seen that meat-eating societies have lived free of this cancer and heart disease for centuries, and truly vitamin D deficiency has more to do with that and is related to cancer, heart disease, and osteoporosis. Saturated fat is an important part of the cell at the cellular level, prevents heart disease, not creating it. So, of 235 women, those who ate the highest amounts of saturated fat had the least amount of plaque buildup in their arteries, had the healthiest balance of good and bad cholesterol, and overall they had better health. And this is out of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. This is the gold standard clinical nutrition research. This is not some fringe study. This is high-end research. So again, coconuts are so bad for us because they have tremendous amounts of saturated fat. Mother's milk is about 80% saturated fat, so you have to have good saturated fat in order to be healthy. Our number one missing nutrient, like we said, and remember, this is the last thing. It's not the fat that makes you fat. It's when you turn the good fats into bad fats. Slick marketing campaigns, they'll make it look like this is nice and healthy. Mayonnaise, and then when you flip on the back, the main ingredients are canola oil, disodium EDTA, so you got to look out for those. Lunchables. Raise your hand if you're giving these to your kids every day. Anybody want to admit to that? That's Oscar Mayer's number one seller. That's their biggest profiteer. Makes them about $500 million every single year. I see kids with these things in their lunch boxes, and it really, literally breaks my heart. We sort of laugh at that. It's a Lunchable, but that's murdering children. And I can show you the research that validates that. It's not just a bad healthy option or unhealthy option. It's literally killing our most precious commodity, which is our children. Those are the ingredients. I've counted like 60-something ingredients. I couldn't even pronounce half of those ingredients. That's a strawberry milkshake. Love our strawberry milkshakes, right? And it's not just Burger King that's the bad guy. It's, by the way, too, those are all the ingredients. Again, half of them impossible to pronounce. And there's no milk and there's no strawberries. So it's literally completely all man-made. Tastes like strawberry milk, but it's made in a laboratory. Chicken McNuggets. Anyone see Jamie Oliver's thing where he ground up the carcass? He literally ground up the carcass of a chicken, and he added coloring, and he fried it in front of the kids. And because he shaped it into a little boot-looking chicken McNugget, they all ate it. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we literally brainwashed our kids so bad. I've reverse brainwashed my daughter. Literally, when we go by the Golden Arches, I have trained her to say, we like their play place, but we don't eat their food. McDonald's makes you sick. So you just got to take control, because it's a tough fight. You're literally up against almost an insurmountable beast, and you have to fight literally every second of every day. They're being bombarded with this information. That's your chicken nuggets. Again, that's from the carcass, not from the nice, healthy part. Two problems with meat. Number one is they're toxic bioaccumulators. So when you're eating a cow, you're eating the toxins it's accumulated throughout its entire lifespan. So if it's a 3-year-old cow, you're eating 3 years of toxic bioaccumulation, and their healthy fats become damaged by denaturation and also their EFA, or their fatty acid ratio, which we'll talk about in a second. This is hugely important. It's the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. So omega-6s are your bad fats, your trans fats, your man-made fats. It comes from non-grass-fed beef. The ideal ratio is 4-to-1. You should see 4-to-1 omega-6s to omega-3s. The grass-fed ratio, again, is 4-to-1. The typical person in America is about 20-to-1. A schizophrenic is 50-to-1. So the further away that ratio gets, the more it affects your brain chemistry, your behavior, and your criminal record, and just your life in general. So the ratio in grass-fed beef is also about 21-to-1. So whether or not that cow ate grass versus grain makes all of the difference. And then all studies that have ever linked fat to disease, because there are studies out there that show you clearly that fat consumption causes disease. They never distinguish between healthy fat and damaged fats. So they don't distinguish between cows that eat grass, get sunshine, and graze and eat natural healthy foods versus cows that are locked in a pen that eat grain and are pumped full of steroids and antibiotics and stand in their own faces. So the health of that animal makes all of the difference. So some healthy animal products are grass-fed beef. Where do you get grass-fed beef? Farmers Market's a good place. Whole Foods is decent. They've got a pretty good. Yeah, it's expensive. That's the thing too. You're in the grocery store. One costs $9 a pound and one costs $2 a pound. They look the same and smell the same and almost taste the same. So it's kind of hard to justify. It sounds great here in a seminar, but when you're in the grocery store, it's a little hard to justify. But it does make all the difference. If you're going to go organic with your meat first, and then do your fruits and veggies last. Free-range chicken. Chicken's just like beef. It's whatever that chicken ate throughout its lifetime. If it's a healthy chicken, it's a healthy beef. And the bad thing about the grass-fed beef and the free-range chicken, whether you go to Outback or J. Alexander's or to Burger King, you ain't getting the grass-fed beef. You're getting the same truck that goes to Burger King is the same truck that goes to J. Alexander's. It's all essentially the same stuff.
There's a restaurant downtown called Merchants.
Yep.
And if you go upstairs to eat, in the restaurant upstairs, they get grass-fed beef, grass-fed beef from a ranch in
Local
Texas.
source?
Yeah. No, a ranch in Texas.
Okay.
They get it from
And Olivia's, which is right down here. I don't know if anybody knows about Olivia's. I eat there several times a week. It's expensive, but
Yeah, it
is
is.
health an expense or an investment? Right. If you spend money on your health and it makes you healthier, it's an investment. It's not. We need to take it out of the toilet paper and cleaning product category. This is not an expense. This is an investment. Wild caught fish. The problem is it's hard to get wild caught fish. It always cracks me up in Nashville when we see fresh fish. This thing's a fresh fish in Nashville. We're 5 hours from any body of water. And you want deep, cold water fish, ideally from the Pacific Ocean, deep waters, that's less contamination. And you still have to be careful. 100% of the fish on this planet are contaminated with PCBs and mercury. So it's really tough to get good, clean fish. By the way, you know what they do with the farm-raised fish? How they feed the farm-raised fish? They put the chicken coops over top of the fish pond. So the chicken is giving the fish their meal, and that's what you're essentially eating. They accumulate mercury. They're so loaded with toxins. The benefit of eating farm-raised fish does not even come close to the amount of risk of toxic exposure from that fish. And then dairy from natural or raw sources. Pork and shellfish. Love bacon and crab legs. I was raised on bacon and crab legs. I'm sure you guys are probably in the same boat. Cocktail shrimp. Are you kidding me? Why is this stuff bad? Anybody know? Scavengers, right? You want to eat fish with gills, with fins and gills. Don't eat things that crawl on the ocean floor because they're eating the poop of the fish that swim above them. And the thing that's wrong with pork is they have a horrible excretory system. They don't sweat. That's why when Wilbur gets hot, he has to go lay in the mud. So they accumulate toxins. They do not get rid of toxins very well at all. And pigs will eat anything. They'll eat garbage and trash and their own young and feces. They'll eat anything. And then if the Bible says don't eat it, then don't eat it. So here's the key. There's one thing you take away from this. We need to work to turn off our GPS. So our GPS, currently our GPS, is set to lead us toward heart disease and cancer and diabetes and all these horrible diseases because we're consuming way too much GP and S. What do you think the G is? Grains. You got it. And that's whole grains and not whole grains and any grains you can imagine. They all have the same inflammatory effect on the body, which we'll talk about in a second. P might be a tricky one. What do you think P stands for? Peanut butter.
processed food.
Potatoes, that's a good
That's
guess.
a good one. Processed food.
Processed dairy or bad proteins, or processed proteins. So processed dairy. And then the last one is sugar. Good old-fashioned sugar. So the bad thing about grains, again, they're inflammatory. There's one nursery rhyme you should remember, that grains inflame. Anytime you eat grains, they inflame your body. And that's every grain you can make. It's not just bread. It's also pasta and cereal and crackers and chips and pretzel and oatmeal. Yes, oatmeal. I know your doctor told you to eat oatmeal every day because Wilford Brimley says it helps your diabetes and lowers your cholesterol, and it's garbage. The studies clearly show the exact opposite of that. If you're going to do oatmeal, do steel-cut oats and soak them overnight. Do them like in the crock pot, and that lessens the inflammatory effect. But all grains inflame, and what diseases are linked to inflammation? Everything.
Diabetes.
Yeah, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, anything that ends in itis is linked to inflammation. Your allergies, your asthma, ADHD, leaky gut syndrome. One of the biggest problems with grains too is that they contain gluten. That's a sticky protein. Gluten and gliadin are the two sticky proteins that cause leaky gut syndrome. Anyone's ever heard of that? It leads to irritable bowel syndrome and ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Those are all digestive problems, which are they're all over the population. Literally pandemic. Several books that can back up this, not just this one. Talks a lot about it too. Wheat Belly's a great book that'll probably make you never want to eat a bagel ever again. The Gluten Effect, Gluten-Free Cookbook. They're linking gluten consumption now with depression. They're linking it with ADHD and autism. and just about, like we said, every disease you can name. Nutri-Grain. Nutra means healthy, right? You got a healthy, that's half of America's preferred breakfast choice. So here's a little game we're going to play. It's called Count the Sugar. You've got filling, which is obviously going to be, well, let's see what the filling's made out of. You have high fructose corn syrup, which is the worst type of corn syrup. Raspberries, corn syrup, which is sugar.
Yeah, right.
The high fructose corn syrup again, which is
Corn syrup.
sugar. Glycerin, which is
Sugar.
fructose, which is
Sugar.
sugar, which is sugar. Maltodextrin, which is also sugar. You got a little bit of water in there because something's going to be healthy about it. Natural and artificial raspberry flavors. Modified cornstarch, which is also sugar. So several different types. It's basically just all sugar. But we're taught to believe that that's a healthy way to
There's
start your day.
hydrogen, partially hydrogen soybean oil.
Which is also known as
sugar.
trans fat.
Trans fat.
Right, so it's full of sugar and rancid trans fat. So really not much worse. I don't know that a Krispy Kreme donut would be much worse than that.
It might be better. There might be
Yes.
less ingredient.
Yeah, right. So here's another big lie. This is that milk does a body good. Every pathetic celebrity we know has a milk mustache. They're promoting this campaign, and probably with good intentions. I'm sure they think that milk truly is a healthy product for our kids. Pasteurized conventional cow's milk is one of the most dangerous toxic chemicals you could put not only in your body, but into your child's body. It contains damaged trans fats, denatured proteins, and tons of sugar. And when you think about it logically, name another animal that keeps drinking milk after they're weaned from their mother. Do bunny rabbits keep drinking milk once they're weaned from their mom? Or do cows even keep drinking milk from their... No. Where do cows get their calcium? Grass. They're not chasing each other around drinking milk. They're foraging, vegetation, essentially. So we should get our calcium from where cows get their calcium. Is that a weird thought? So milk does not do a body good. Pasteurized versus raw. So here's, when you do the comparison, because you have to distinguish between the two. Raw milk is healthy, and pasteurized milk makes you sick. So where's the best source of milk? What's that? Mom. Mom's the best source. But if mom's not in town, if she's not local, then the next best is raw milk. And then what about after raw milk? Because raw milk's sort of hard to get a hold of. You got to go to the farmer's market.
Low key pasteurization and not homogenized.
That's way down low, but still better than traditional cow's milk. Almond milk or coconut milk. So mom's milk is best. Raw milk would be second. Coconut and almond are sort of a toss-up. And then you have your non-homogenized, low pasteurized organic milk, and then you have your traditional stuff. Go ahead.
Where can you actually buy raw milk? Because you can't buy it at grocery stores, can you?
You got to go. No, it's illegal to buy raw milk in the grocery store. You can buy cigarettes, but you can't buy raw milk. So it's got a little label that says not for human consumption. You'll have to get it at the farmer's market. It says, warning, you cannot drink this. By law, it has to only be given to animals, which is absurd to me. So when you're talking about tooth decay, pasteurized milk causes tooth decay, whereas raw milk prevents it. Raw milk has about 50 to 90% more of a positive benefit on child growth. The calcium in pasteurized cow's milk, it produces a deficiency, whereas it's a good source in raw milk. The vitamin A is destroyed in pasteurized milk, where it's still intact in raw. B vitamins are intact, vitamin C is intact, but the B vitamins get 38% destroyed and about 50% destroyed vitamin C in the pasteurized milk. When you're looking at fats, pasteurized milk's proteins get denatured, where in raw milk they stay intact and healthy. Proteins are the same way. Iodine's destroyed. Good bacteria get killed in the pasteurization process, and they thrive in raw milk. And then the bad bacteria are actually higher in pasteurized milk. The whole reason they pasteurize it is to kill the bad bacteria, but it's actually higher in the bad milk, and then less in raw. And tuberculosis and scurvy, better cases in raw milk. So if you're going to go with milk, the key is just to sort of shift away from milk in general. If your kids have to have milk, then do coconut or almond milk. You can substitute in recipes that cook for it. Whatever you're cooking, you can substitute almond milk with coconut milk just fine.
Is that pretty good for you, or is it not good for you either, really?
Almond and coconut? Yeah. Great smoothie recipe I just discovered is Coconut milk, and I like the stuff out of the can that's still really thick. Do a scoop. We have like chocolate protein powder. Add a half of a banana and a little bit of cinnamon and ice, and it literally tastes like chocolate milk. If your kids could taste the difference between that and chocolate milk, I'd be surprised. And it's got great, good, healthy, saturated fat in the coconut milk, and it's got great protein. So it's almost a meal, and it tastes like a dessert. So you can eat healthy without feeling like you're depriving yourself. That's the key. So the 3 keys: you want to fats, toxins, and eliminate sugar. The average American consumes 53 tablespoons of sugar per day. That equates to 5 pounds per person over about a 5-day period. The average American consumes 120 pounds of sugar per year. At the turn of the century, we're consuming less than 5 pounds of sugar for a 4-member family. So sugar consumption has skyrocketed, and so has heart disease and cancer. High fructose corn syrup, the number one source are colas or sodas. Most people don't know that our biggest exposure to mercury, other than shellfish or fish, is also high fructose corn syrup. And then also mercury amalgam fillings. If you have silver fillings in your mouth, it's leaching mercury into your system every single day. So you need to work to get those out. We have a dentist that we recommend here in town. It takes 30 cups of water to neutralize 1 can of soda. Soda is do the paperclip test. Put a paperclip in a can of soda and check on it in about a week, and it generally will be dissolved or massively oxidized. So if it's not good to metal, it's not good to your flesh and bone, for sure. And sugar comes in a lot of hidden sources. You have pasta sauces and lunch meats and canned foods, condiments, pizza, sauces, salad dressing, crackers, fruit drinks, yogurt, soups, and breads. It's basically in everything that God didn't make. If man made it, it's probably loaded with sugar. Also, too, there's other derivatives, not just sugar. It's also corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, corn oil, oddly enough, is also a form of sugar. Cornmeal, cornstarch, dextrose, MSG, xanthan gum, and maltodextrin. So those are all other sources that you need to know the names of. You gotta even be careful with salt nowadays, because even salt contains sugar. And anytime you see low fat means high sugar. Anytime they strip the fat out of something, they're going to pump up the load of sugar because it tastes like cardboard if they don't. So low fat equals high sugar almost every time. This is Dr. Otto Warburg's research. He was a Nobel Prize winner back in the 1930s. He found that cancer, above all other diseases, has countless secondary causes, but even for cancer, there's really only one cause, and it's summarized in a few words. It's a replacement of the respiration of oxygen for the fermentation of sugar. So when cancer cells begin to utilize sugar for fuel, that's when cancer is caused. A normal healthy cell has 2 receptor sites for a sugar molecule. So on a normal cell, only 2 sugars can attach. A cancer cell has 8 receptor sites for sugar. So cancer loves sugar. You ever heard of a PET scan? We've all heard of a PET scan. A lot of people have family members with cancer. They inject radiographic glucose or dextrose into the body. They inject sugar that's tagged with, it's basically tagged radiographically. So they put sugar in your body, and then 72 minutes later they do a test, and they want to see where all the sugar is collecting. So the sugar will find the tumor, because cancer loves sugar. I've seen a picture of an oncologist office with a big candy bowl on the front reception desk. I mean, it's insane how traditional medicine doesn't see this connection. I've had a lot of cancer patients. Their oncologist never even mentions sugar. Doesn't even mention dietary change as even an option. Don't even worry about it. Doesn't matter what you eat. Just take your chemotherapy. I mean, it's insane. And your body fights cancer all the time. We all have cancer. There's cancer in your body, my daughter's body. We all have cancer cells. It's just a matter of whether or not our immune system is winning the fight. That's the key. 10 reasons you want to avoid sugar. It's the primary cause of obesity. It increases acidity of the body. Disease can only exist in an acid environment. So you can't have cancer in an alkaline environment. You can't have heart disease in an alkaline environment. Your body has to be acidic in order to be sick. Causes inflammation. And again, too, when we're talking about sugar, it's not just table sugar. It's also grains. So grains fall into that same category of sugar. Primary cause for high cholesterol. Inflammation raises cholesterol levels. And in hormonal and metabolic imbalances, it's the fast track to diabetes. It's a known toxin, causes heart disease. It's actually an anti-nutrient, so it takes nutrition away from the body, and it promotes cancer. So if you want cancer, be sure to eat tons and tons of sugar. Has anyone ever had a family member in sort of their later stages of cancer, like before they died? What's the only thing they typically wanted to eat?
Candy.
Candy and grains and candy and bread and pasta. They really only want to eat sugar because the cancer's taken over and it's driving their hunger response. It's telling their body what it wants, which is more and more sugar. It's tragic. So what's worse than sugar? What's worse than sugar?
Fried sugar.
Baked sugar.
County fair sugar.
Artificial.
Sweet and low.
Artificial. Sweet.
Yeah, the pink stuff, the purple stuff, the yellow stuff. Worse. If your choice is sugar versus all this artificial garbage, then just go with sugar, I guess. That's the better. Definitely better off. So sucrose, Splenda, by the way, is sugar with a trinilated trinyl chloride in the presence of a dimethyl fluoride and a 4-methyl. I mean, it's basically chlorine. They take off an OH group and they add chlorine to the sugar molecule. So when you're eating sucrose or sucralose or Splenda, you're essentially eating chlorine. So if you like chlorine, eat lots of the yellow packet. And that's now the name of the actual sugar molecule. And the advertising gimmick says, oh, it's made from sugar. It's just like sugar. But when you look at the actual chemical composition, it's so far removed. And it's relatively new, so almost no studies have been done on sugar, on Splenda. And the purple stuff or the blue stuff is no better. It's a potent neurotoxin. Pink stuff has aspartame, which is just as bad. I mean, one's no better than the other. Diet drinks, to answer your question, it's a perfect solution, right? No calories, tastes good, diabetics love it. It won't cause weight gain, which is a lie. The studies show that people that drink the most diet sodas over regular sodas tend to gain the most weight because you're tricking your body. You're telling your body it's supposed to get nutrition and calories and sugar. It doesn't, so it stimulates your hunger. So people that drink diet drinks are hungrier. And the problem is all these artificial sweeteners and the acidity of it. So again, the best thing to use are going to be your substitutes, like sugar, or like stevia, and then also xylitol. Those are your two best. So if you're cooking, xylitol is a good option. Then also we have stevia. We all need protein. Protein is one of the harder things to get a hold of in our diets. I'm not hawking, supplements, but we do give you a reason. We have about 4 things we sell because it's the things that just about everybody needs all the time for the rest of their life. Protein, and our protein that we use is low denatured. It's not cooked. It's not heated at a very high temperature, so everything stays intact. It's sweetened with stevia. There's no artificial sweeteners. There's no sugar, and it comes from grass-fed cows. So that's my sales pitch on that. Our omega that we carry is that 4-to-1 ratio. Like we said, a lot of you have omega-3 supplements that are very high in EPA, but have no healthy omega-6s like evening primrose oil and borage oil. So in nature, they're found in that 4-to-1 ratio, and it affects your health better if it comes in that same 4-to-1 ratio. This is a chart that everybody should know, and probably nobody can read. It's your vitamin D levels in your blood versus disease. So can everybody read that? No? At the left side, it names the diseases, and then across the top, it's your vitamin D levels in your blood. Everybody here should know what their vitamin D level is, by the way, because it's not just about your bones. It's about every facet of your health. So at the top, it said cancers, and this is all cancers combined. If you have a blood level of 52, you could reduce your risk of all cancers by 75%. Literally would be the easiest thing for everybody to do is get your blood level up above 50 and you cut your risk of all cancers by 75%. Why is that not headline news? And why has your doctor not told every single one of you about that statistic? You get your blood level around 64, you cut your risk of breast cancer by 67%, you cut your risk of ovarian cancer by 25% at 46 level, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, type 1 diabetes, fractures, falls, multiple sclerosis, kidney cancer, endometrial cancer, and at the bottom you'll see what's called rickets. That's what our guidelines for vitamin D are set up to protect us against, which is rickets, which is a softening of the bones. So they recommend your blood levels at least 30. So most of you have been to the doctor, you probably had your blood levels tested, and they tell you as long as your level's above 30, then you're okay. And that's a joke. That's enough to keep you from getting rickets. If you want to be healthy, and you might want to write this down, your levels need to be between 80 and 100. It's probably a lot higher than what your medical doctor's ever recommended, but your blood level of vitamin D should be between 80 and 100. Not only does it help you with all those diseases, but it cuts your risk of cold and flu to almost zero. It cuts your risk of Alzheimer's and allergies and depression, seasonal affective disorder. When does that normally happen? Winter. When do we not get as much sun? When do we get the flu? Right. When does the flu magically go away? In the spring and summer, right? When we're out getting more sun. So they think that the flu and seasonal affective disorder is nothing more than just a vitamin D deficiency. So skip your flu shot, which doesn't work and is loaded with mercury, and just take extra vitamin D. Everybody needs at least 5,000 units every day of vitamin D, primarily to get your blood levels where it needs to be. So science, again, has linked low vitamin D with many conditions. We got about 5,000 units a day, which is just for your normal maintenance. 50,000 a day if you have health challenges, and there's really no known toxic dose. If you know someone who's sick, like around this time of year, people start getting colds and flus, take 50,000 units a day for at least 3 days. And that releases basically your body's own internal antibiotic. So it kills viruses and kills bacteria at those high doses. Again, with calories, it's not just calories in and calories out. So calories aren't just calories, it's quality. So 22 almonds is about 153 calories, whereas one Twinkie is about 150 calories. That's why Weight Watchers fails. It works great in the short term, but I still have my 4 points, so I can eat my brownie tonight instead of my nice healthy dinner. So it doesn't distinguish between nutrition. It's all about just counting calories. Anyone ever done that, by the way, that counting calorie madness? Everyone's done? How crazy does that make you feel? And no one keeps that up. You can't keep that up. It'll drive you insane, and it's impossible over the long term. So what we teach is not counting calories, it's counting nutrition. So we have 2 plans, the core plan and the advanced plan, and the book goes through those in detail. The core plan is for most people. You replace your bad fats with good fats. You go to naturally raised animal products versus your conventional products. You want to go, when your carbohydrates, you want to go with whole carbohydrates versus refined. So that still does allow grains. If you're on the core plan, preferably gluten-free would be ideal. And whole grains, not just wheat or white grains. You want to make sure you go with whole grains, and then you want to eliminate refined grains and sugars. On the advanced plan, that's for people that want to lose 20 pounds in 30 days. They want to reverse their chance of diabetes or reverse cancer if you have relatives that are in trouble and need quick change. The advanced plan is for them. You need to increase your intake of good fats. You want to moderate your intake of protein. Make sure you're not eating too much protein. And then eliminate grains, fruits, and sugars. Except for berries. And what are berries? Examples.
Strawberries, blackberries, raspberries,
Boysenberries. My daughter calls them doodleberries. I don't think that exists. But anything that ends in berry is approved. Granny Smith apples. Why Granny Smith over Red Delicious?
lower glycemic.
Right, lower sugar, lower glycemic. And then grapefruits, lemons, limes, and avocados. Those aren't on that list. Those are all approved. You can eat them all the time. A great bedtime snack is cut up an avocado, cut up a green apple, take a bite of each, and you get sort of the crunchy with the mushy and the slimy. And it's a good, nice little mix. And it's great fat and low glycemic. So the beauty of the advanced plan, it does four things primarily. It burns fat, it helps your body to detoxify, it reduces inflammation, and it balances hormones. So what do you think happens to someone who has type 2 diabetes if they burn fat, detoxify, reduce inflammation, and balance hormones? What happens to somebody that has cancer or allergies or asthma or diabetes or heart disease or any other disease you can name? It's not a treatment for disease. It's just getting your body massively healthier, and then those diseases typically will go away. And that's the key, is your body has the ability to heal. But we've always been taught that if you get sick, then that's just your life. That's, you have diabetes, it's just going to get worse, and it's your lot in life. And that's nothing could be further from the truth in most cases. Replace all forms of sugar with healthy fats. So when you're craving sugar, eat good fat. That's the key. So instead of sugar cubes, which you guys all love sugar cubes, right? Like Skittles, go to almonds. That's a much better choice. So again, the killer is inflammation. It's not high cholesterol, that's not the biggie. Again, that comes from sugar, damaged fats, toxins, elevated leptin, and this hormonal thing that we'll talk about in a second. Another question, I wanted to throw this one in here too, because I get a lot of questions about aspirin. Should I just take my 1 aspirin a day? Most of you have probably been recommended. It's good to take a baby aspirin every day. Did God make you with an aspirin shortage? Did he sort of forget that in the mix? I don't think so. In the theory, and here's where all this recommendation comes from, they took men that had a heart attack and they gave them aspirin for 5 weeks. And if they didn't have a recurrence of a heart attack in just those short 5 weeks, then they deemed that to be preventative against a future heart attack. They take that very short time frame, and that's the same study that most of your doctors are still using to justify that aspirin recommendation. For some people to say baby aspirin, right? And the problem is thick blood doesn't cause heart attacks. That's a myth. And aspirin's obviously $1 billion industry, and look here. The theory is that thinning the blood recurs it, but the problem is that thick blood is not what causes it. It begins the oxidation of cholesterol. And then if you take a daily aspirin every day, it doubles your risk of cancer. That's from the Journal of Cancer. It increases your risk of pancreatic cancer by 68%. It increases your risk of hemorrhagic stroke by 84%. So if you want to thin your blood and you really think that's important, then take fish oil. Fish oil has some of the same blood thinning properties. Leptin, that's the hormone everybody needs to worry about, because again, it's not fat that makes you fat, it's your body's inability to burn it. Your body actually makes leptin from the fat cells. It's a hormone that tells your brain to burn fat. I call it the mother-in-law hormone, because it's constantly telling you to burn fat, burn fat, burn fat, burn fat. So when something's constantly yelling at you, what do you normally do? Sort of tune it out, right? It's like the kid in the back seat saying, "Are we there yet?" So you just sort of ignore it, and your body can no longer hear leptin, and it makes you what's called leptin resistant. It's very similar to insulin resistant, and that makes you unable to burn fat no matter how much you work out or how much you diet. The key is you have to reset your body at the hormonal level if you're ever going to get healthy. So your hypothalamus is what hears the leptin. As you start to burn out your receptor sites, instead of a normal hypothalamus that has multiple receptor sites, it gets fewer and fewer, and it takes more and more of that leptin to produce a response. Leptin resistance is related to heart disease, diabetes, obesity, osteoporosis, arthritis, and just even the aging process itself. The advanced plan, the best thing about that advanced plan is it resets those hormonal pathways and it turns your body into a fat burner instead of a sugar burner. A lot of people, because they're leptin resistant, are still sugar burners instead of being fat burners, and that's the key. If you want to be healthy, you got to be a fat burner. So here's the 3 kickers, and this is what sort of shoots it out of the water for most people. No sugars, and that's sugar in all forms. No grains, no whole grains, no healthy grains, not even the smallest amount, and then no fruits, except for berries, green apples, lemons and limes, grapefruit, and avocados. The question for most people is how long? And the answer is until you meet your goals, until your diabetes is reversed, until you've lost the weight you want to lose, you have the energy you want to have, or you don't have the cancer anymore. Until you reach your goals, you stay on that plan. The first 2 weeks of that are crucial. It's really the first 7 days, but I always tell people 2 weeks. If within those first 2 weeks you have 1 piece of sugar, you go right back to the beginning. It's almost like an alcoholic that has 1 sip of scotch. Within their first 2 weeks of detoxing, they're right back where they started. So you got to go cold turkey, and you got to stay cold turkey as long as you can. And then once you get your body rewired hormonally, then you can have pizza every now and then. You can have a little bit of candy if you have to, but it doesn't totally screw up your hormones and the way your body burns fat for fuel instead of sugar for fuel. So you got to do it at least for 2 weeks. Everybody needs to eat G-bombs every day. Every day you should all have G-bombs. What are G-bombs? Greens? Yeah. Nobody said grains, did they? Greens. Green salad, so anything green except for green Skittles and green candies, just anything green that grows on the ground is good for you. B would be berries. Berries are highly anti-cancer. They're anti-aging, they're anti-cancer, they have antioxidants. It's really the secret to long-term longevity. Onions. Onions have allicin. It's that chemical that makes you tear up and cry when you cut them. It's also highly cancer neutralizing. It helps to reverse your risk of cancer. Mushrooms. You should eat mushrooms every single day if you can. 10 grams of mushrooms reduces your risk of breast cancer by 67%. Just 10 grams. You know how much 10 grams of mushrooms is? 1 cap. one little cap of mushrooms can reduce your risk. And that was a study done on about 2,200 people over 3 years. It was a great study done by Columbia Health University.
I like them.
It's very simple to do, and that's not worldwide headline news. B is for beans. You all know the song, beans are good for your heart. The more you eat, the less you have heart disease and cancer.
That's not how I heard it.
Say your version.
No.
And then what do you think the last S is? Sugar. Seeds. Good old seeds. Pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, good old-fashioned seeds.
Our nuts aren't considered seeds.
Yeah, you could probably throw nuts on there.
Nuts and seeds.
NG bombs or something. It just didn't work with my mnemonic. So, by the way, too, so the way we make this work in the real world is every day you eat a big, huge green salad. You go to Whole Foods, you go wherever, Ruby Tuesdays, I don't care, and just a huge salad with just an obscene amount of everything on it. So, berries and onions and mushrooms. I don't eat onions before my shift here for you guys' sake, so we do that at night. But yeah, just everything you can get with some balsamic vinaigrette or some ginger dressing, and just every single day, and you meet your requirement for the most part. You all have a copy of this nutrient density index. That's the Andy score, it's aggregate nutrient density index. All your food, especially they do this at Whole Foods now, it has an Andy score, and the higher that Andy score, the better it is for you. The key to long-term health is the proportion of nutrient density versus calories. So the less calories you eat and the more nutrient density you eat, the longer you live and the healthier you live. The more calories you eat and the least amount of nutrients, the sicker you get. It's proportionate. It's really that simple. So the foods on the left side of that column are the ones you want to eat the most of, and the ones on the right are the ones you want to try to avoid. Some of them are kind of surprising, like
Cashews are way down there.
bananas, right? Some of the things, but they're just not very nutrient dense. Doesn't mean they're not good for you. They just don't have a very dense, per calorie, dense amount of nutrition.
So
By the
if you're
way,
getting your
too,
bang for your buck.
right. And now, too, a bowl of spinach today, we'd have to eat 8 bowls today for what our grandparents got 30 or 40 years ago. So with agricultural change, we were seeing depletion of the soil, so you have to eat even more and more, generally. So here's the biggest myth, too, or one of the biggest myths, is you are what you eat. Everybody's heard that, which is true in some sense, but it's really you are what you digest, absorb, and assimilate. So you only are what you get out of your food, and you have to be able to extract the nutrients and utilize the nutrients in order for you to get healthier. Your autonomic nervous system, we have to touch on this, is what controls everything in the body. So every time your heart beats, every time you digest all these healthy G-bombs that you're eating, it's because your brain is controlling and coordinating that process. Your digestion is made up of 20 different organs that work in perfect harmony to make you out of whatever food that you're eating, and that's all controlled and coordinated by the central nervous system. Anything that interferes with that system will interfere with your health. When we look at an example of Christopher Reeve, a lot of you already know this, that he fell off of a horse from about 5 feet in the air. He landed chin first on the dirt, and it burst the top bone in his neck. And it literally bruised his spinal cord. The only thing that happened was just a bruise on the spinal cord. But it shut down his muscle movement because he was stuck in a chair. He had a tube coming out of his throat, which was a respirator to keep his lungs going. He had a pacemaker to keep his heart beating. They had to push on his bowels to make his bowels move. His immune system shut down, his hair fell out, and he died in roughly 9 years. Now, was that because he didn't have enough good food and good nutrition? Of course not. Will good food and good nutrition bring him back or make him healthier? You could give him all the good food you wanted, but he would never ever get healthier. He's going to continue to get sicker and sicker, and all of those medicines and machines are what's keeping him alive. So if you've damaged the nerves to your stomach or your digestive tract or your spleen or your kidneys, everything that helps you make more of you out of your food, then you cannot be healthy. So when you're looking at health, food is hugely important, but the function of the nervous system really can make all the difference. And I have a lot of people too that come in with digestive problems and they have wonderful diets. They're basically eating this plan, they're exercising, but they're still not healthy until we clear that nervous system. So the goal of what we do is to keep the pressure off the nervous system so your body can function and heal the way God designed. And then in accordance with all these other essentials, that's really the true key to health. So that's our system. The mindset, which is the reason you're here today, is to change the way people think about their health in order to change the way that they manage their health. That's the key. Maximizing nerve supply, maximizing nutrition, Maximizing oxygen and lean muscle mass refers to burst training. If you haven't heard already, Casey and Catherine are doing now burst training classes for free. God bless them. Saturday mornings and Wednesday at lunch. What's the time on Saturday? 8:30? 8:30 Saturday, and then I think 11:30. 11:40. And then minimizing your exposure to toxins. So that's really the key to health, and that has changed hundreds of lives in this office, and that's the system that we teach. If you have friends and family that want to get checked, if you get them signed up tonight, then we will get them an exam and x-rays, everything we need to do on the first visit to see if they're healthy and how we can help them. Also, too, did you do this little package here? Catherine, what's the numbers on that? So how much was it normally? So these 4 products, the vitamin D, the omega, the perfect protein, and the nutrition book, it's normally $144, and we're doing it for what? $114. So it's $30 off if you buy it tonight. I think there's like 6 or 7 of those packages left, because that's basically, or if you order it tonight, if you get your order in tonight, and we don't charge tax either, so that's like another 10% off. So that should help out as well. And 2, I was kind of thinking about life a lot lately, and how we sort of move through these phases of life so quickly, and just almost seamlessly we go from childhood to 20s to 30s, and just before you know it, life just kind of moves past us. I came to the sharp realization last week that I'm officially too old to be showering with my 5-year-old daughter. That phase of life has ended. I won't give the details of the conversation. But sort of that precious innocence is basically gone and taken away, and it's simply gone because life just moves in that direction so fast that our kids are being drugged and medicated, and literally the lion has them around the neck, and it's up to us to pull them out of this. And our system, our culture depends on you guys to change what you do now, to influence your families, and then do what you can to spread this message to as many people as possible. So if if this is something that you want and you want help here, those 2 women at the front, there's no better people, no better human beings on the planet, Christine included, that would not help you and do whatever they can to help you get well. If you're out, if this is not your cup of tea and this is not what you want, then we need your seat. And that's just very straightforward. We really need your seat because the lives are at stake, and we've got to get this message to as many people as we humanly can. But hopefully everybody wants this, and we have a seat available for everybody. But we just want this message to as many people as we possibly can. So God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.